I say I started studying late. What I mean by that is that although I was in high school and learning the performing arts, I didn't really consider it a profession. And so I was learning what was given to us freely by federally funded programs in school, but I never really considered it as to be something that I could possibly do. It was never intense training or like private coaches or anything like that. I didn't really understand the world that is, the world of like studying this so that it could be a career. It was just an extracurricular activity for me. So I didn't start studying seriously until I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. And then I was like, oh, wait, this can be a career. Oh my gosh. And that's when I fell in love with it.
Welcome to the Knowledge Night podcast. Today we have Brandon Lee Sears. He's an actor, singer, dancer. He's a part of theater, television, and film. So all the creative arts that you can think about, he's been there, done that. Currently, he's performing in Come From West in London's West End. His theatre exploits include Dirty Dancing, My Fair Lady, and some of the works from William Shakespeare like Hamlet, King Lear, and Othello. And to talk about films, he's also been a part of Disney's Artemis Fowl, Greta, and Cinderella. So welcome, Brandon. Happy to have you on the podcast. So if you could take us through your journey, right from childhood. I've read about how you've come across adversities in your growing years, and you've faced them all, and then come down to what you are right now. So just take us through that journey.
Well, again, like you said, my name's Brandon Lee Sears. I grew up in a town called Evansville, Indiana, in the United States of America. I'm from America, but I live in London now. And I grew up with three younger brothers. So I have an identical twin brother,
Okay.
who is my best friend in the world. And we have two younger brothers. And growing up, I was a foster kid. So at around the age of 10 years old, me and my three brothers, we went into foster care. And kind of around that time, just before we went into foster care, when things were really rough as a kid, um, and things weren't going so well with my family. My parents weren't quite equipped to take care of my three brothers. And so a lot of times we were around with, not much to do. And we grew up very poor. And so luckily there were performing arts programs that were funded, federally funded. And so I was allowed at school to participate in singing lessons, just, in public school, just with, teachers, and also instrumental lessons as well. And I started studying the cello. And so I really developed kind of a love for the performing arts. And for some reason, it felt like it was just separate from me. Like whenever I would study and practice the cello, or whenever I sang, it was fun. I loved it. And it was kind of a savior. It was a way for me to kind of, I guess, have a release for, I think, what was stressful and a traumatic time, before we went into foster care. And then once I went into foster care with a beautiful woman who was lovely, intelligent, strong, passionate foster mother who continued to provide us with everything that we ever needed. And also, she not only did that, but she made sure that I could show up to every as my interest and as my love for the performing arts grew. She made sure that I was able to get to every rehearsal and kind of really, take on board the discipline and the training that's necessary to really, I guess, progress in academia, but also in the performing arts. And so, although I loved it, it wasn't quite something that I was really that I considered it could be a profession for me until I graduated high school and went to a school for the performing arts. Luckily, the performing arts served as this catalyst for academic growth And so when I graduated high school, I was able to get scholarships, won several scholarships to study. And I studied opera and voice originally. Then I transferred to study musical theater and dance. And I won a scholarship there to study at the Boston Ballet. And after that, after I studied at Boston Ballet for a while, I was absolutely sold on classical dance. So I spent most of my 20s performing in classical ballet companies as an apprentice and training in classical ballet dance. I started studying late. What I mean by that is that although I was in high school and learning the performing arts, I didn't really consider it a profession. And so I was learning what was given to us freely by federally funded programs in school, but I never really considered it as to be something that I could possibly do. It was never intense training or like private coaches or anything like that. I didn't really understand the world that is, the world of like studying this so that it could be a career. It was just an extracurricular activity for me. So I didn't start studying seriously until I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. And then I was like, oh, wait, this can be a career. Oh my gosh. And that's when I fell in love with it. And then I started really putting all of my time, effort, and energy into singing, acting, and dancing. And then that's when the world kind of opened up for me. I spent some time studying classical ballet companies. And after that, I went on to perform professionally in regional theater companies. And then in 2013, after I guess 13 years or so of working, I got my first West End. I moved to London, and then I got my first West End professional show in 2016. I started it, and I've been performing in the West End ever since. And I absolutely love what I do.
I think that's a fantastic story, coming from somebody who has to take care of your siblings, get into foster care, and to get out of all that and, just try and make sure that you excel at whatever you do. I think that's a fantastic story. In, performing arts, something that you took up very seriously and now it is your profession. How much of help was there from your educational system that you could concentrate on academics separately as well as focus on performing arts? Did the educational system help you?
Oh, that's really interesting that you asked that. I don't know for me, the education system did help me. Before we went into foster care, my parents weren't always around. And then there was drug abuse in my family. And so for me, the education system in going to school, it served as a safe haven for me. And so I found that like my teachers were kind of, not only were my mom and dad matriarch, but also the teachers in the education system. I looked up to them. They were also kind of helping to nurture me. I looked at them as, I don't know, I guess, these kind of motherly, fatherly figures, especially the women who I saw present as teachers in my life. And so they were helpful and encouraging and seeing something in me, a spark, talent, and encouraging that, supporting me in that way. And so I think it was the performing arts and this kind of finding something in the education system, finding something that I really enjoyed. And once I connected with that and that landed, then all the rest kind of fell into place. Mainly because I was the oldest of my three brothers. So I already had to take on a sense of responsibility that I don't think normally a child of my 7 years old has to take on. But also, because I enjoyed the performing arts, I found myself overachieving. And so some of that was overcompensation. Some of that was like a need for thinking that I had to do well in order for someone to love me, which can be a dysfunctional behavior. But a lot of it was also because of the performing arts. and having an outlet of something that I could connect with at school that I loved, that I could wake up in the morning and go to. So in that way, I think the education system served as a safe haven for me.
That's nice. I like how you mentioned the teachers, played a major role in channelizing your energy and focus into the performing arts. And I believe you would like to just return the favor, which is why you're teaching dance as well. I mean, you've done your MA in professional practice and dance technique pedagogy from Middlesex. So tell us something about that. How did you get into actually teaching the performing arts rather than just being a professional performing artist?
I've always been interestingly, I've always been teaching. So even when I was younger and and didn't really have a bit of training at all, I was I was correcting my brothers and trying to boss them around. And we would meet and we would have small performances for my foster mom, for my mom. So as you walked up the stairs, there was I guess this window that was a partition out of the wall, and we would stand on the stairs and do talent shows for each other when I was about 10 years old. And so I would choreograph shows or set up skits with my brothers, and we would perform for my mom whenever we were kids. Well, I think I've been teaching since I was 10 years old, just because I like to boss, I liked to boss my brothers around and kind of act as a teacher for them. But I started, taking teaching seriously, I guess, as I've just always taught. I always love it. I've always loved connecting in that way and giving back. I started taking it serious enough to study pedagogy whenever I was in a musical called Motown the Musical in the West End. Okay. And I loved teaching, but I found that although I was teaching, there were some learners that I wasn't able to reach. I felt like the tools that I had weren't quite enough to reach every child that I was teaching young kids at that time. And so I just figured that if I went back to school and learned something else about teaching, that I could kind of contribute more. I absolutely love connection and contribution and community and a sense of community and family. And so whenever I'm teaching, I just love engaging with others and knowing that I'm contributing something, and then to see someone to effectively manage or be a part of someone's progress is just something that makes my heart sing. That's half of it. And then the other half is I want to continue to get better at my craft. So I know that by teaching, acting, singing, and dancing, I know I'm going to get better at it. Teach what you would have to learn. So that's the other part of it.
Right. So it's about giving back to the community what they gave to you in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about sharing. It's about sharing that, giving back, and it's about also that connection that happens whenever that sharing and that giving takes place. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I do remember, I do remember that the teachers, and that's not only teachers in the academic school system, but just teachers were always the ones who had an effect on my life. So absolutely.
Right. So there's one question that always intrigues me. Can art or performing art, can it ever be taught, or is it something that's inborn? I mean, you are a teacher, so I'm sure it can be taught, but how is it different from math or science or history or geography?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I don't know how to articulate how it's different from math, science, or history, or those things. I can only tell you, I think that anything that anyone enjoys or loves, it's much easier for someone to grasp something that they can be made to enjoy. Right. And I think that that's whether it's math, science, history, or the performing arts. Whenever I feel like whenever the person learning has an active part in how they learn, when they're given a sense of choice, when they feel belongingness or connection, And if they feel like they can do it, if they have a sense of competence, then it's possible to learn anything. I've learned that like not everyone learns the same way. So although I did well in school, I'm quite analytical and I'm a linear thinker. Not everyone. I actually believe that people have preferences for learning. I know some people don't actually believe that, but I believe that people do. And so I think that you have to. It's every individual is different. There are billions of ways of learning, and a true teacher knows how to connect with someone. I hope I'm not getting away from the subject. A true teacher knows how to connect with someone, find out what they're passionate about, make the connection with whatever subject it is with that learner, and then that learner will be able to learn. I think that anyone can learn math. I do. I think that anyone can learn science or history, and anyone can learn the performing arts. Now, the proclivities that someone will have, like, and how they're able to kind of how they're able to absorb it and make it work for them will change. There are some people who have a slight, a talent or knack for some subjects more than others. However, that's only half of it. So like, it doesn't matter how talented someone is in the performing arts. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't mean anything, especially when you're talking about pursuing a professional career until you put in the work. And so that's the performing arts, that's math, that's science, that's history.
Right. Absolutely. I think the baseline remains the same, whether it's your standard school subjects or it's performing art. So as a teacher, what do you think is the most important skill that's required? Is it, like you said, is it knowing what a student wants to learn and how a student will adapt to learning that particular subject, or is it something else?
I think, and are you asking me as a teacher,
Yeah, as a teacher.
as an educator? So as an educator, what I'm continuing to learn is the most important thing is that an educator, a teacher has to be continually learning themselves. And that's most important, because like how can I simulate information, information being whatever it is that I'm teaching, how can I simulate information and then share that information without constantly observing, responding, and learning from the environment that I'm in and that I'm teaching it? And so I think that I would love to be considered a master teacher someday. And to me, a master teacher is someone who doesn't just share information, but who teaches someone how to learn what they're teaching and gives them all the tools so that they can, to give someone all the tools and necessary skills and abilities so that they no longer need me. I think that's an amazing skill and ability to have as a teacher. And I think that's most important. How can I teach someone how to teach themselves to learn any subject? That's just that really excites me. And it's so different for everyone, especially when you're talking about the performing arts.
I think that's a brilliant point. I think most teachers fail in that aspect. It's just a one-way communication, and that's the end of the story. But I think very well put that unless you can transfer that knowledge in which the student can then go on and teach further, I think that's when the circle of education is sort of complete.
Absolutely, I agree. I remember one time I was teaching. This was before I really started like studying and teaching at all. And I was dealing with this group of students. They were young. They were probably around between 7 and 10 years old, and I just wasn't getting through with them. There were behavior problems. They weren't really keen with what I was teaching them, although they would have fun sometimes, but their behavior was horrible. And then one day this was very early on. One day I just sat them down and I just forgot to ever have a conversation with them. And I think it was because of their age. And so we just started talking, and like the stuff that came up in that group, I found they just kind of, you know, they just opened up to me about a lot of stuff that I didn't know was going on in their lives. And not only did they open up to me about things that were happening and going on that kind of made me aware of where they were coming from, but they also, I learned how to teach them and just talking to them. And so not until I was able to open up and to be open to an experience rather than being so on the front foot and direct and straightforward and feeling like I had to offer information. Not until I was open and vulnerable enough to hear where they were coming from was I able to really learn how to engage with them so that they could be so that in turn I was creating an environment that was suitable for them to learn.
Interesting. And what excites you the most about teaching? That one thing which makes you, go to your students every day and teach your heart out.
Connecting and discovery. So I'll go every day just to connect. I love people. I love hanging out with people. I love learning from others, and I love feeling inspired, talking to others. That excites me, whether or not whoever it is, whether or not I'm in a teaching setting or not. The other part is seeing someone grow and watching a person grow and learning from their growth. That excites me. Standing in the wings and watching other actors when I'm on stage, that excites me. And whenever I'm rehearsing a show for me is one of the most exciting parts of performing. And performing is lovely because we get some applause and you get a pat on the back. Whereas teachers and I guess other jobs, you don't get to have someone applaud your work all the time. That's right. The beauty of performing. But yeah, I'd say connecting and seeing progress, or just through discovery or as discovery.
Nice. So like you said, when you're performing, you know whether you're good or bad immediately when the audience applauds you or doesn't. But I think teaching, it's like a slow burn. It's over the years that you understand whether you're doing well when you see your students do well and grow in life. Interesting.
Sure. But I will have to say to you though, even sometimes the audience applauds you and you still don't know whether or not you did good or bad. But at least you get the applause and the praise.
Yeah, I'm sure. So any books that you personally refer to, or you would like to recommend to people who would want to be teachers of tomorrow? Any specific references?
Because I never really consider myself a teacher. I do consider myself an educator because I consider myself like an actor, singer, dancer, performer, and teacher. I don't have books specifically on teaching, but I have some books that have made an impact on my life as far as my sense of well-being, personal development. Because I came from a broken home, was poor, was a foster kid. I often suffered from like self-limiting beliefs and like low self-esteem. And there were several books that I've read in my life that kind of changed. They were a catalyst for they planted a seed in me where there was a change of thought enough for me to follow on that change of thought and kind of upgrade my life, integrate habits into my life so that I could change what I was creating. And the first of those was Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. I've never really known about meditation beforehand or experiencing gratitude and giving. And in this book, I actually forget what all the 7 spiritual laws are right now. But in this book, Deepak Chopra talks about gratitude. He talks about experiencing silence. He talks about experiencing like pure potentiality. This kind of sense that in every one of us, and infinite potential. That changed my world. And that's important to have. I feel like every teacher has to understand that in every one of your students, no matter what walk of life they come from, is infinite potential, pure potential at the source of what we don't even know is, that kind of God spark, what people call God. No one really knows what that is. That infinite potential is in every single person. And in that infinite, pure potentiality lies all the possibility that ever was. That would just blew my mind. That's just so exciting for me. That actually, no matter where I am, I always have a choice to begin creating the life that I want for myself. That's exciting stuff for me. So that's one book. Another book is A Course in Miracles. It's called A Course in Miracles. It's just a spiritual book as well, around love and connecting with each other, letting go of fear, and connecting with all of my brothers and sisters on this earth, so that I can actually truly come into a knowing that we're all one. That was really important for me. And then another book, it's not even long, is a book called The Four Agreements by a gentleman named Don Miguel Ruiz. And I think Don Miguel Ruiz was a shaman. And the four agreements, he expounds on the four agreements, which are the four agreements are: be impeccable with your words, don't make assumptions, be impeccable with your words, don't make assumptions. Oh my goodness, I can't think of the other two. I should know the other two. They'll come to me now. They're not coming to me now because I'm talking to you. But anyways, the four agreements, I know them. Hold on, let me think. Be impeccable with your words. Always do your best. Never make any assumptions. And the fourth one will come to me. Someone, you can Google it.
Right. Yeah, we'll do that. Right. I think, even in the first book that you mentioned, where everyone has infinite potential, I think Steve Jobs has a very good quote where he says that everything around you was made by people that are no smarter than you. So I think So I think that's very important. A lot of us are uh, criminally undermine our own potential, and that's something that we need to all work on.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Right. So I think we've spoken a lot about education, learning, teaching. Let's talk about dance, because that's something that's your life right now. So let's talk about any dance performance that you've been a part of. So how do you basically go about designing a complete dance performance?
So it's interesting you asked me that question. What I have to say is that as a dancer, as a singer, as an actor, I've not necessarily been a maker.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is been involved with on the kind of production side of like creating a piece. I have to say that I've always loved. I used to battle against this and I used to judge it, but actually I love taking someone else's vision. It's just what and kind of seeing how I interpret that vision to bring it to life. So creators do that as well. But normally what happens if you're talking about a dance production is that, there's so much to think about. If I were to think about a dance performance, how it comes about, I mean, you have the creation of it, which is a vision. And depending on what type of dance performance it is, you have a choreographer and a creator of that dance performance, and then you have dancers, those people who dance the piece, or are the enactment of your vision coming alive. The one thing that I will say is that, like, it's not only about the creation, it's about the discipline and the training that happens outside, so that you can be technically proficient enough to embody someone else's vision and bring it to fruition. And that takes so much, it takes so much, it doesn't take so much thought. It just takes the ability to be, to feel so confident in what you're doing that you're able to, I guess, take on board someone's vision and then interpret it, see it as your own. And so I don't know if that's answered your question, but that's kind of how I see that exchange between choreographer and dancer or creator, along with the people who are helping to embody a vision or to embody or to bring to life a production.
Right.
There's a vision, and then there's all this other stuff that happens, connecting with others, teamwork, and figuring all that out, and then the discipline and training that's necessary to kind of put it into a rehearsal process to see it come to life.
Right. Right. So, what according to you is a good dance performance? If you had to say judge somebody else's performance, what is it that what is it that you focus on? Is it expressions? Is it the actual skill of dance? Is it about connecting with the audience?
For me, it's about connection. For me, it's about an emotional connection. It's about, I think that there's sometimes something that's so beautiful. It's a number of things. It depends on what you're going for and what you want. Like, I mean, there are some times that, I just want to see something beautiful. Like, I studied ballet for so many years because I just thought it was so aesthetically pleasing for me to see this, to see people create these beautiful shapes and lines. And so at the beginning of my dance career, it was all about trying to build up my own ability and skill set enough to create these beautiful shapes and lines. And I love this sense of control, to be in control of your body, that you can create this beauty, this aesthetically beautifully looking, work. And then it started to change and become more about emotion for me and storytelling, and how do we connect? And you start to add music to this, and that's really what it is. Like, you can see someone who's a beautiful dancer, but then once you add music, and then you have an emotional, real human experience, that's what a beautiful performance is. Now, when someone combines all of that, I mean, that's awesome. When you have something that just looks good, is technically proficient, is astounding to watch and takes your breath away, but on top of it, you have all of this kind of this sensory experience.
Right.
Then that's really awesome, along with a story, drama, conflict.
Right. I get your point. I think it's not about certain specific parameters. It's about the entire experience that sort of, that if you can emotionally connect with it, becomes a good performance. If it doesn't, it just falls flat. So I understand.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all watch dances, and we can all relate to what you just said.
Yeah.
So I mean, as a performer, I'm sure you have your ups and downs. So how do you get through them? What keeps you going as a performer? I'm sure you'll have performances where the audience just doesn't like it, and then you'll have some performances where there's applause that just doesn't stop. So how do you get through that, and what keeps you going?
The interesting thing about, once you make a professional career out of something that you love, is that you start to experience the opposite, and you start to experience the contrast. That is, what used to be an extracurricular activity and used to be a way of releasing and fun. When you start to add monetary value to it, and it's your livelihood, it takes on all kinds of new aspects that you never thought that it would. That's what becomes difficult sometimes, is that, this thing that I love, this performing, when I have to do it 8 shows a week and it becomes really exhausting, how do I keep this sense of reverence toward it? Things that's difficult. And so I think the most important thing, and that's just one part of it. Like, life happens. Sometimes, this is as a performer, this is in any profession, you just have things that happen in life that are difficult to take. You experience one experience is loss or grief, pandemic, changes in life that we're not ready for. And then that's when I think that it's really important to have a really strong sense of core values, a really strong sense of self, and a way to kind of stay connected to source, or what is a sense of well-being. And I think that's different for different people. For me, it's trying to connect with what we all want. And what I realized was that, with all the goals that I've ever had, and a lot of the goals that I've ever had, I've reached. I've actually reached a lot of goals in my life. But every time I reach a goal, it's never as invigorating as I thought. A lot of times I think we set goals and we think that we set goals with this feeling of, once I arrive at this place, or once I get this, it will change me, or it will make me happy. And I've realized now, mainly with this, with a career that I once only ever dreamed of, that when you receive and when you reach a goal or you get a desire, the next day you're still yourself. We're still who we are. And so I've tried to put practices into my life that connect me with peace, love, joy, and the sense of prosperity or abundance. And when one can connect with those things that cause that, and what those habits are, for me, it's meditation. For me, it's making sure that no matter what, even when a day is horrible, sitting down, meditating, concentrating on the here and now, and building up habits in my life that keep me grounded, give me a sense of space so that my thoughts don't run around with me, so that I don't run off with my thoughts, and connecting with a sense of, some people call it spirituality, some people call it God, some people call it love, some people call it all kinds of different things. For me, it's this sense of connecting with well-being. It's well-being, it's goodness, it's love. And the more that I can build habits into my day that keep me connected to that source, then you can overcome challenges. You can draw meaning from challenges. Sometimes life does not feel good, but if you can come out on the other end grateful for the experience, I know that sounds seemingly insensitive for some, because when you're talking about losing a loved one, it's hard to think about how you could ever be grateful for that experience. But what I mean is being able to have space around an experience enough to know that I'm going to be okay. This too shall pass. And looking back on everything that you shared with that person with a sense of reverence, respect, and gratitude. If we can always find our way back to connecting with that, I think it doesn't matter what happens, we're okay. Yeah, there are some times when this profession gets really hard. It's extremely competitive. Oh, it's extremely competitive. And you get so many no's. I get so much rejection. And I've just learned now it's actually a habit to just continue on in spite of the rejection, in spite of the downfall, in spite of the trials and tribulations.
Right. I think I had a look at a video about how to overcome rejections that you had posted on your personal blog as well. Right. So despite all the rejections, all the downfalls, what are the most exciting thing about your profession as a dancer? What was the most exciting, and the flip side was the least exciting as well? Is it
Yeah.
the discipline, waking up early in the morning?
So, I mean, the discipline's not the rejection, I think, is what is the downfall,
Right.
because in order to have a career, especially a successful career, you have to audition a lot. You have to seek out loads of opportunities, that many you won't be successful at. You'll get way more no's than you get yeses, and that's difficult, especially especially if one hasn't learned to like not not how to equate their sense of worth with the opportunities that we have. I think for such a long time, and still do sometimes, that I'm finding myself, you know, judging who I am and where I am based on the career that I have, or based on the success that I'm currently experiencing. And when you just get no, that's difficult. However, when you get the yes, it's just so awesome. When you audition, 8 times for a show, and then you get a call from your agent that's like, guess what? Here's an offer. This is the role you're going to be playing next if you so, decide to take it. That's just, there's nothing like it. And it's, it can be slightly addicting. And so, yeah, the yes, that's the best part. The applause, the people you meet. Oh, the people you meet. I mean, the performing arts, like the people in the performing arts are just out there, we're wild, crazy, loving, calm, beautiful human beings. And like, you get, obviously, you get the run of the, you get your run of the mill, the different types of personalities and people that you come that you get to connect with. And so I love that. A sense of teamwork, the yeses, and a sense of teamwork, working with others to see a vision come to fruition. That's just the best part of this industry, and to be able to do it, and to work with people to like entertain and to connect with others emotionally, and to cause like this inspiration. There's just nothing like it. It's so fulfilling. And then if you combine it with teaching, you get another perspective that's just pretty awesome.
Right. I think that's a very prudent combination, teaching and performing and teaching. I think
Absolutely.
the connections that you make will be phenomenal, uh, right through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any myths you would like to bust about performing arts? Somebody sitting on the outside will think it's all glitz and glamour, easy to do, larger than life.
Mm.
I'm sure it's not that.
Yeah, I mean that's the myth, isn't it? Like that like I love getting on stage every day. Myth. Not true. Like what you do is so fun. It's not always fun. Myth. Busted. It's not always fun at all. Sometimes it's really difficult when your body hurts,
Right.
and you feel like you can't walk, and you've got to get up early and go train. Myth. Once you start working, you're going to continue working. Like once you perform, like once you get a West End gig, or once you get on Broadway, like you've made it. No, you haven't. That's a myth. Like I know people who worked and never worked again, and decided to change careers. It's extremely competitive. So that's definitely a myth. And I think another myth is that it's so different from any other job in performing arts, and that's just not true either. You still have to continually train. You still have to have an extreme amount of discipline. You still have to, I just think, yeah, treat it with respect, and treat it like a business. But like I am my business. And so I've got to invest in myself. I've got to be responsible with myself, and I've got to work with others to take inventory. of where I am, and yeah, and all that comes along with it. So I guess yeah, those would be some common myths that I would bust.
Right. It's not as easy as it looks clearly.
Indeed.
Right. Right. So cool. So we have spoken about your performing arts, you've spoken about education. Now, let's like just to close things out, let's put it all together, right? Imagine your Wikipedia page, say 25, 30 years down the line. How would you want it to look like? What would you want to be in there?
Oh, so I have some goals. I have some yeah, I have some goals and some dreams. Uh I haven't performed on Broadway yet, so I like to affirm that, I'm a working actor on Broadway, a principal role, winning Tony Awards, Olivier Award winner,
Right.
and performing more roles in film as well. So those things at the moment. I teach. Although my career started out strongly as dance, I also act and sing as well, and I teach acting and these things as well. So I'm always learning and continually growing. But I have some major goals that will happen. Hear me. And because I really truly believe that if you can conceive it, and if you can really truly believe it, then you can achieve it. And so definitely hopefully some things, some dreams and visions and goals that I have for myself, you'll see fulfilled here soon.
Absolutely. Totally gunning for it. I mean, probably one day when you are at the Tonys, I'll be there, I know this guy Brandon has spoken to
Nice.
him a few years ago.
Absolutely.
Right. So just last thoughts, just summing up everything that we've spoken so far, we spoke about uh, your childhood to how you grew up through all the adversities. You are a performing artist now. You're also giving back to the community through education as an educator, teaching students the skills of performing arts. So we are actually working towards, making sure that the education system doesn't fail its students, right? And while your teachers and the education system sort of supported you through your journey in the performing arts, there are so many students who do not get to do what they want to do. They are forced through a stream of subjects that they never like, and it just stunts their growth. So, your thoughts on the education system of today and the education system of tomorrow? If you were in charge, how would you change the education system? What changes would you bring in place?
Oh goodness. Um, I would go back to kind of teaching a lot of practical skills, skills that like people don't really necessarily have anymore, like things that I would wish someone had taught me, like how to plant a garden, how to get into the earth, practical skills like building, things like this. I think that they're not given because we automate things, and because of AI, we don't teach these skills anymore. But I think that like sometimes these skills of building things, of creating and creativity, problem solving, that's what's important about it. Not
Right.
necessarily building in itself, not necessarily like, because I'm gonna have to build a house or build something, or be a carpenter or anything like that. It's just about seeing a problem, making decisions myself, seeing solutions, and being in charge of that, And I think that like I just don't see how, by teaching people to memorize and learn by rote teaches these skills. It's not saying that it's not necessary or that it doesn't have some place, but where's the problem solving in that? Like when I left high school, like there are some things that I just never needed to know again. And I would never, but I really wish that someone would have taught me how to, one, manage my finances. Like some people do learn this stuff. I wish I would have learned it in school because my parents weren't teaching me. Like manage my finances, solve problems, be innovative, learn how to see a problem and adjust, learn how to communicate with people, learn how to work with people, to uh, to see vision and to sense. It took me the longest time because I did very well in school. And that's because I knew how to write something down, learn it, write something down, study until I learned it. And it took me, when I got out of school, a sense of creativity and a sense of like seeing a problem and having an offshoot of thought that not only solved that problem, but opened up something new and innovative. Those are the people who are offering the greatest amount of service right now. You know, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. I'm just mentioning, some people, and I recognize now that those are like all white men, but like there are more people than that, but like who are offering amazing service. And Oprah Winfrey, like the people who are offering the greatest amount of service to the greatest amount of people. I mean, they're using a lot of skills that we didn't really learn in high school. And so I would say the number one thing is just to have think about what we honor as higher. So the hierarchy of it all, and then just boom, just tearing it down. It's a dominant structure that is like been fed by a very white male perspective and lineage for years. And so I just think if we start honoring some other perceptions and forms of thought and working with the creativity in the room, I think that we could really, I don't know, that's how I see education, honoring the individual and teaching the individual what the individual would have to learn, rather than just a whole bunch of this dominant structure that places importance on skills that a lot of people don't use.
Right. I think it's all about education being more inclusive. Like you said, it's dominated by white males, but when you have the other races and communities come in, and in terms of languages, in terms of skills, it's not just the math, science, tech students that need to be spoken about. It's all these guys who want to do, professional arts, or try innovating different things and making a change in the world. I think our education system needs to embrace that, and that's what's kind of missing today.
Of course, absolutely. Like we don't even honor feeling. We don't even honor feeling. Most of feeling and emotion. Most of life is not like just like math and science and history. Like it's about feeling. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about learning how to respond to the world in a way that's non-reactive, so that you can meet life's challenges and make meaning from them and continue, to grow and connect with others and offer support to others. No one teaches that in school.
Right.
That's really, really that's a real downfall.
Right. And a lot of students might do well in school, but when they get out into the world, they are suddenly lost because they don't know how to speak to people. They don't know how to write emails. They don't know how to feel, like you said. So
yeah, absolutely. I certainly agree. And so, but I think things are changing. Like the innovations and kind of the trends that are in education now are somewhere that it's much further along than when I was in school by far, and so I think that we're getting there, and I appreciate the work and the growth that I'm seeing. I think especially with the pandemic, I think that we were all forced to kind of rethink how we approach things, just because everyone was sat down, and just kind of stopped in our tracks. And so I think that things are going. I'm hopeful and optimistic, and sometimes kind of ridiculously so, that things will get better and people will wake up, or that we are awakening.
Right. All right, Brandon. On that note, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It was great talking to you. So I'll see you at the Tonys then.
Thank you. I'll see you there.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Have a nice day.